Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Thriller Podcast. What's new this week, Mike?
Not much, but we have an exciting book to cover today and an author that neither of us have really talked about before. So this is going to be some raw thriller pod action today.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I remember when we were starting Mitrap, you told me to read this, and I didn't have time outside of finishing grad school and doing just the Mitrap books. I didn't have time to do it, but now I have a little bit more time on my hands, and we're trying to build this new feed. So, yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about today.
Did you say a little bit more time on your hands, with the 4 kids and the doctorate, that just freed up some time for you to, hang out and read books?
Yeah, I've since added 2 kids since we started the podcast, have a new job, and now have to move in less than a month. So,
Oh, I forgot
yeah,
the
I have
house and the new job. Yeah. Oh, totally forgot about that.
a little bit more time, but, it is what it is.
Yeah, but I'm pumped. I've been bugging you since this book came out in, was it 2020, I think?
2020, yep.
And I've read the now 3 books since. Funny, we're recording on May 3rd, which is the publication date. So congrats, Chris Hauty, on Storm Rising, the 3rd book in the Hayley Chill series, but really the 4th book if you count Insurrection Day, which was a little novella between books 2 and 3.
3.1, or right, 2.1,
There you go.
2.5, there we go, 2.5. But before we get into the book, I just want to say little announcements. Make sure you go and check out on this feed. We've already published interviews with both Andrews and Wilson, as well as Ward Larson, discussing their most recent books, as well as Season 2 of the Scott Harvath podcast is up and running. We've dropped Lines of Lucerne there, as well as another episode detailing one of the scorecard, which we're going to actually tweak it a little bit today. We'll get to that. And we got Path of the Assassin going up next week, so be sure to check that out.
Yes, and I guess we should say, just like on the Mitrap pod and the Scott Harvath pod, we are spoiling the book. So
Yes.
Consider this major spoiler warning coming at you. On Thriller Pod, we intend for this feed to be a book club style discussion. Sometimes just Chris and I, sometimes we'll have the authors on with us, but we always want to get into the meat and the heart of the books, breaking down the plot, breaking down the characters. So, you've been warned. In just a minute, we're going to talk about Deep State.
Yeah, let's do it, Mike. Let's kick off our first book club style podcast. I mean, I guess this is not our first one. We've been doing all the Mitrap, but our first non-Mitrap book club, or non-Scott Harvath book club, which we hope to have many more. We hope to bring on some guests, as you mentioned, the authors. So yeah, you want to kick us off, Mike?
Well, Chris, you know I like to share my thoughts in the form of a limerick. There once was a boxer named Hayley Chill, a true patriot and hero who fits just the bill. A shocking reveal. I even let out a squeal. Thank you, Mr. Hauty, for the thrill.
That was good. I like that.
The people have been warned, so can I just bring it up? That ending, bro.
Oh,
can we start there? Can we start at the end?
You have to, because there's no getting around this book. So as you mentioned, right? You told me that you were reading this 2020. Everyone was talking about it. Chris Hauty. I want to get it right. Hauty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not Howdy. Okay, so Chris Hauty comes on the stage. Everyone's talking about it. I guess it was the same time around Total Power was going to come out, right? And you read it, and you're like, "Hey, I don't see it. I don't see it. Everyone's talking about this ending," and you're like, so you had told me that there was some crazy twist, and in my mind, I forgot about it. And we discussed we're going to read this. I'm reading it, and I'm reading this book, and I'm like, I mean, Mike, this is a good book, but I'm just not seeing it. I'm not seeing what you're saying, how amazing it was, how. I'm just like, it's decent. It's a decent thriller. I was engaged. But I'm not going to put this. The first ending.
The first
is
ending,
okay,
right? And then boom.
But then I'm getting. So I do most of my things on audiobook, right? And so unlike if I was reading a physical copy, you could probably see that, like there's still a decent amount left once you get to the supposed ending or the saving of the president, right? And then I'm like, there's got to be something else. There can't just be like, it had 40 minutes left on the audiobook. I'm like, what the hell are they going to talk about for 40 minutes? That's just not some wrap up chapter. And it was like, whoa, it's almost like I thought of like the Ocean's 11, like where they do the whole plot, they do the bank heist, and then once they succeed, they then go back and then tell you like very quickly like how everything happened, like pretty much replay the entire movie, but how it actually happened. And that's what he did here. And I'd have to say, the plot twist was amazing.
Oh yeah,
so good.
So you're ramping up the action at Camp David. Pretty cool scene. I like what's going on. President's life is saved. The typical move that we were so trained, by reading thrillers, you're almost trained to be like, okay, we had the rising climax. The action happened. A couple of chapters of debrief, close it up, go home. And we were kind of disappointed in that with Lions of Lucerne and Path of the Assassin. And even Mitch Rapp books. We consistently said on season 1 of the podcast, that might not have been Vince's strongest characteristic, was writing endings and closures to books. Some were great, some raced to the finish line, but others left us wanting.
I will say with Lions, like the only thing I didn't need the debriefing chapter. I felt like
right.
Everything just stood on its own, and I was like, holy shit, are we going to get a 40-minute debrief on like the entire plot? But no, we did not. We got something completely different.
Right, because like look at Vince and Brad. The two things are like Vince Flynn has crazy action. It's sometimes so jam-packed. It's too quick. And then Brad Thor gives you a whole big explanation at the end, really re-explaining the plot to you. And I'm just like, okay, those are kind of the traditional ways of doing it. So I'm expecting here, I'm just going to get some wrap-up. She's going to go to the White House, get to the Oval Office, shake hands with the president, maybe get an award or something. And then, no, when she drops the Russian, I lost my shit. I lost my shit when she starts speaking Russian.
I know you texted me, I guess, early like Friday, right? And you're like, how are you liking the book? And I was like, I like it. It's good.
Right, yeah.
And I was only up to the point where, she just got in the accident with the Secret Service agent, Billings, right? And they obviously crashed and got away. That action was pretty cool. And I was like, this is nice. Got some good beats. And then you were just waiting.
I was waiting.
As soon as that Russian hit, that's when I texted you. I was like, what? No way. Like this makes the book like so much better.
Oh,
like that twist is effing amazing.
It completes it.
So I purposely didn't. I almost asked you this before the pod, but I wanted to save it for you. So I guess we can just get into a general discussion of the entire story here, and it's related to the twist. So you're going along, and one of the problems I had with like why it wasn't really clicking for me the first 3/4 of the book. I'm like, how is she able to do some of this stuff? I know it's like, it's a thriller. You got some amount of buy-in. You got to just, all right, this is our character. She's going to go through things, right. But she had a little bit of proficiency to her. I mean, yes, they gave her a backstory. She was in one of the first, 18 females to be infantry. She was obviously a boxer, skilled in hand-to-hand combat. But some of the things that she was doing, like, were kind of Mitch-Rapp-esque or, Scott Harvath-esque in the sense that I'm like, I don't fully buy the fact that, all right, this, this Anna Riley character is going to be able to taking out these people, not to compare Hayley Chill to Anna Riley, but, in the beginning, I'm thinking like, all right, this, yes, she has military background, but really? But I want to bring this question to you. I think once you go back and you rethink those scenes, one, it fills it out better. She's obviously now an agent. Yes. And two, I think she knew all along the people, like she purposely started, I think she purposely started a fling with that Secret Service agent. I think she purposely brought in Asher because she had some feelings about him, like that he could be involved. I think she knew all these things and wasn't letting on.
Let me break some of this down, because I'm going to say I agree with you on some points there, but I am going to take odds to a couple of them. For example, I will definitely say this book, in the second go around, you almost expect it to be not as good because you know the surprise.
I want to reread it now.
Right. So you want to reread it and be like, oh, I wish I was kind of giddy again and this surprise can shock me. But it's almost more meaningful reading it again the second time, knowing what's coming, because you can look for things differently. And I'm going to say, if you read it again, I don't think you'd feel that way about Billings, the Secret Service agent. I think Hayley is authentically having a relationship, and maybe something in her mind is like, I can use this to my advantage. But I think she's also human at the same time. A few times we're in her head and she's reflecting on sex and her whatever and her relationships in the past. You kind of get that she is a human who wants and could have a relationship. So I don't think she's completely going super agent there, dating him at first.
But that was Hauty's choice. Or sorry, I'm going to mess it up all the time. Hauty's choice to not overtly give us those clues because he didn't want to spoil. But like, just think of the scene where she goes back to his apartment, sneaks in. Like, what normal person would just think to go back to the apartment and sneak in?
She was doing that to clear her name because she didn't want to be implicated in the crash. Like, how about this? Go back to the moment where she sees the boot print in his car. You can't tell me she honestly was caught off guard and needed to react in the moment, and her face was a tell. If she was playing Billings and thought he was suspicious, her face or her body language would not have betrayed the tell in that moment.
I guess you're right. You're right there.
So,
right,
Chris,
maybe my argument doesn't fully hold up, but
yeah, there are a lot of things though where you're completely right. The second read of this book, keeping the end in mind, you read it so differently, but you enjoy it more, I would say. And you also see that not everything was a setup. And I think that's the genius, because there could have been some clues that were so on the nose. You didn't see them the first time. You go back and read them the second time, and it's clear as day. And I'm glad that almost doesn't happen. It still shows Hayley as a person. You can see and understand how she's part of a secret organization and she's super trained, but it's not hit you over the head with it. You know?
I'm also like, the first time around, I'm like, man, this lady just immediately believes in a deep state. Like, you know, people have been talking about a deep state for years, and then all of a sudden she just, you know, meets, you know, gets a warning from the chief of staff.
Okay, that was weird.
And she's like, oh, there must be a deep state. But obviously there's a deep state because she knows there's a deep, you know, she knows she has intelligence about it, you know, but the whole time I'm like, man, she's really fucking naive, thinking that of one man's word to be cautious. Yeah. But now it makes sense why she's cautious, because she knows it's right.
Dude, I agree. I felt it was so weird when the chief of staff randomly drops the tidbit about trust no one, watch out for the deep state, to an intern that he kind of just met. So it rubbed me as a little weird or out of place that deep state came up that early, particularly between these two characters with no history. But then it got me thinking, could that have been the chief of staff's reveal to see if she was part of the deeper state, if she was in Publius, because he knew about Publius, or he was warned by Publius? And so I'm wondering if, when he said that so soon to her and brazenly, trust no one, watch out, that wasn't just like your mentor's advice in a professional work setting. It was something different. It felt weird.
It's this person that he's met like 20 minutes ago.
Right.
Gets her to come upstairs to read the speech for him, and then randomly was like, they're out to kill me.
That was so weird.
Watch your back. And I'm like, and then she essentially believes him, and that's why the whole story, she doesn't go to the authorities immediately with this stuff. And I'm like, wow, I began to like, I didn't like her. I started to not like Hayley Chill. And then she Chris brought me all the way back around when I
makes
realized
more sense
that,
now, right?
Yes, it makes complete sense because she knows that there actually is a deep state.
And it makes me wonder if he was part of the Deep Earth state all along, or at least knew about it.
Or at least knew about it, or knew
Yeah.
that a mole was there, or like someone was there to protect the president. Well, protect the president.
Right.
If he knows that there's Publius, he probably doesn't think that the guy he's working for and idealizes is the mole, right?
I don't. That's why I think it's murky. I don't think he's read into it that much, but I think he doesn't even know maybe a Publius exists, but he's attuned to there is a deep state and there's a network of patriots who are trying to defend against it. I don't think he's read in, because actually at the very last scene, to read in Hayley Chill that the president is the mole, she was the only one selected out of all the trainings. That's a very closely kept secret. So no, I don't think the chief of staff would randomly know that. But I guess there's little things like that. A plot this intricate and a storytelling reveal that's this bold and brazen. There's going to be the gray zone, right? It's not going to be clear cut, black and white. Everybody's good, everybody's evil kind of thing.
I also one of the other reasons why I assumed that she was interacting with people that she knew to be, or at least suspected to be a part of the deep state, was because I'm like, man, this girl has bad luck. Every single person, and I know it's a book, and I know that's how it's supposed to go, but every single person, the first guy she dates at the White House, he was part of the hit team. The guy who she runs to away from that guy, he was a mole for, feeding information to, the CIA deputy director, right?
Yeah.
So he's also involved in this deep state. Even though he wasn't involved, wasn't actually part of the deep state. He was involved in somehow, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, either she's super unlucky, or once I read the ending, I was like, oh, maybe there's a reason why she was with those people, because she suspected them.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't like so much, was that Asher was an informant for Odom.
I didn't want him to be. I wanted him to just be a regular character.
He was a good friend for her, and he was somebody you'd want in, an administration on a personal level. Leave the politics and whatnot aside.
Sure.
He was just that good guy you kind of would want to work with and want to have your back. Though the backstory was fleshed out enough that that's how Odom recruited him. He went through a bad breakup. He felt lonely. His parents were struggling accepting him. He was in, an institution. And of course, it makes sense that someone from the deep state would recruit you, a vulnerable person who's in a position of power, and ask for certain information in return. So I didn't like that he was a mole. I'm glad he wasn't a full-fledged conspirator.
Right.
But you wanted to cheer for him.
And he didn't give up Hayley. I like that.
Yeah.
And I like that, well, because you could kind of see how he was manipulated, right? Originally, he's gung-ho, signed up to be a part of this administration.
Right.
And then gets turned by this plant, right, by the CIA director, to resent and hate the administration.
Right.
And then, so you're right, you go through this time period with Asher where you think, he actually believes that the president maybe deserves to be killed, right? There's a couple lines where he almost hinges on that. And then Chris almost goes to the point of saying, he's like, oh, well, no, actually democracy, requires us to not do that. And he almost gets it with Asher, and then boom, we get that twist that he's actually a mole. And I was like, I was kind of hoping that he would come around and be like, actually, no, we can't kill the president.
Right.
Hayley has this interesting line. It's like, all right, what if the guy you like is in office and someone was trying to do this?
Yes.
What would you call it? A coup d'etat? And I was like, oh, that's a pretty good,
That was a very good line.
And
what if the Supreme Court?
I see that.
What if the Supreme Court had a ruling that's very radical, but you completely agree with it, versus the Supreme Court has a ruling that's pretty out of character, and you completely disagree with it. You want to villainize the institution when it's against you. You want to support it and defend it when it's for you. But that's not how the
politics
game works.
I guess.
It's
no,
politics,
and that's not how it shouldn't work.
Should work, yeah. Let me just respond to this point that you were wondering, and I maybe on my first read I was too. How is Hayley so darn good?
Yes.
And sure, I get that, but the reason I didn't question too much was the first chapter. When you
the boxing
meet her,
did do a good job of that.
when you hear about the boxing and how brazen she is, like she wants to go against this person who's way better than her, way more experienced than her, who all the odds say is going to kick her ass. She just wants a chance to be in that ring, and she exploits the vulnerability. And her growing up in Appalachia and the struggles, losing her parents, and the hardships she
Raising
endured.
raising her sisters, yeah.
Raising the sisters, all the lessons she learned throughout her life. I was okay with her doing badass things throughout the story, even with little training, just because her army background, her boxing background, that boxing mentor who we learn dies, and dies pretty tragically. I want to talk about that in a minute.
I want to bring that up too. Yeah.
But I bought into who Hayley was solely based on how strong an entrance we got to her and her backstory. I thought the backstory was fleshed out in one quick chapter right off the bat.
No, I guess it's not that I didn't buy into her character per se. I just had this gnawing feeling that something is not right here. You know, like I believed that she could do those things, but I'm like, why do I believe that she can do those things? You know, that nothing really has shown me or said to me, you know, because how long was she in the military before they came and recruited her? Like, not that long, right?
No, yeah.
A couple years.
She's young. And
yeah, she's had a, difficult backstory. She's obviously a good fighter, like all of that. Sure, I believe that. But just, I'm getting like John McClane vibes in, like Die Hard, like stumbling in an airport and, he saves the terrorists, that like, all right, you have a cop. He's obviously a cop. He does cop things, but he's going to take down a terrorist in an airport or in a building,
Yeah. You need more training than just a cop, a street cop.
Yeah. So I got some of those vibes, but then again, once you get the ending and everything like clicks into place.
Right. I brought it up, so I got to get your take on the flash forward. And when I interviewed him, I dubbed it Doing the Hauty.
Doing the Hauty.
So what do you think about Doing the Hauty? The flash forwards, that is unique.
Well, so I think we can talk about that, and we can also talk about his writing style in general.
Yes.
So obviously he's a screenwriter. Like he's written a couple of movies.
Over 30.
Yeah. And so once I didn't know that until I Googled him like halfway through reading this book, and I saw that, he's a screenwriter. And then, because as I'm listening to it, I'm like, something is different here.
It is.
This is not how this is not how George Guidall reads, which I will have to say, Mirren Ireland, she's the audiobook reader.
She did a great job.
Do you know where she's from? I mean, she's obviously an actress, but you know what I remembered her from? She played a character in Homeland. She was she married a Muslim, and they were like deep Al Qaeda moles in one of the seasons.
Way. Oh, that's wild.
And as soon as I looked up her and I saw her IMDb, I'm like, where do I know her from? And it said Homeland season whatever.
She got Hayley's accent spot on, dude.
She was a really good reader.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I was saying about like when George reads a Mitch-Rapp book, or even when what's his name? Armand Schultz reads, Brad's books, like the language, the writing style is way different than what Chris does. And it clicked, he's a screenwriter.
Yep. Very declarative, very straightforward. You
can see where his descriptions of, Hayley walks in with a a grimace on her face, and someone looks at her, it reads, and then it sort of evens out into like a normal paragraph, but then it goes back into like how you would imagine the little informations you would get before a cut scene, right?
Yep. You know what I love about that? It's very descriptive in the sense of you can see it playing out,
yes,
but not in an unnecessarily flowery way.
Right.
It gives
it's very
this
succinct
economy of language that needs to be so direct. And Chris has spoken about this because in Hollywood, And one of the jokes he made, this was on the Crew Reviews podcast. So the Crew Reviews, great podcast, does interviews with authors. When they had Chris on, he said, everyone in Hollywood hates to read. And so if your script didn't catch them right away and you couldn't keep their attention, you were out. It was right, that you were done, one and done. So he when he switched over to thrillers, which he was totally brand new to, never really considered or had thought about what it'd be like to write in this genre, but was a reader of the genre, he kind of just naturally did it in his own way. And this book is very unique in that sense. Crisp, quick, declarative sentences and descriptions. What I like about that is the plot and the characters have to speak for themselves. They're not going to get a ton of this verbose, descriptive, vivid, sensual fluff to kind of fill in the gaps and make you feel a certain way. You have to emote based on the action, the plot, and the characters very directly. And the fact that he gets, I would say, that much emotion or engagement from a reader with language that is so bare, that's pretty impressive.
And I would have to say the dialogue's pretty good. Like,
right, the dialogue too.
That's a lot we get. You know, we get these sort of declarative statements addressing, you know, the surroundings, everyone's facial expressions, you know, sort of actions that are going on around the room. But then we get some pretty nice dialogue, which I thought, you know, was one of the bonuses of his writing. Yeah, for a while there, I was like, I don't know if I like this. But then as I kept going, it was so propulsive. Like it was almost staccato in nature. How he does these declarative sentences, and then I texted you like immediately after we got like we get two of these Pull and a Hauty like right off the bat.
Yep.
I guess we get the one about her boxing instructor. We also get the one about the person that she fights, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is very strange. Like I've never seen anything like that before. But I was digging it.
Yeah.
Like the one where, what was it, Becca, one of the other interns, like she goes on to be like a multi-million-dollar cult leader and then ends up dying in her Tesla. No, that was the aide. She ends up going to jail, right? Yeah.
Right. I like the intern dynamics. Not only because you see their futures, but I feel like he also got... It's funny, after all that happens in this book, one of the memorable scenes sticking with me is the intern office. The way they're treating each other. It does stick out. Right. The way they're competing. And one is this finance bro whose dad got him the job. And you're like, let's see how that turns out for him. And he doesn't really care. And then Becca, who is this bossy bitch, you know, who's really competing against Hayley and everything's a competition, ends up becoming a scam artist and a cult leader. Yeah, I just think that's those. And dynamics.
Then the third one is like some actor or director's daughter who, you know, is the pretty one and is just there because she needs to do something.
Right.
He gets the dynamics. You know, I've had some people who have interned at the White House, been a White House page. And yeah, like it's cutthroat, but I feel like in movies and books, they always ramp up like the super cutthroat nature of it. But, you know, I just say like in my field, I've seen the cutthroatness of just in like a freaking biology field. So I can imagine that stuff like this exists. You know, you hear about the stuff that happens on like Wall Street and finance. So I wouldn't put it past people, you know, being vicious like this in this situation.
Fits. It really fits.
It felt like a scene out of House of Cards, you know?
Right. And I like the fact that it's with interns. So it's kind of innocuous. Right. And it's not really the major power players, which is further setting you up to be like, how does Hayley break through here? What is she going to be able to influence or affect from this office? And very quickly, her military background gets recognized. Her quick wits get recognized when she's up in the briefing room with the cabinet. And so I don't know why, but the intern scene really sticks with me. But I want to zoom out here a little. We've been really focusing in a narrow sense. If we zoom out, how much do you buy the Monroe administration as a whole? So he's never been a politician before. He was a vet from Kuwait, Operation Iraqi Freedom. He's served 2 tours doing that. And he just becomes like a talking head and really popular. And everyone sees him as kind of just a down-home, good old boy representing American values, a patriot, if you will. And he very quickly sweeps this election and has people convinced he might be what America needs to get back on track and move away from all the political bullshit.
Well, could you see the parallels that Chris was trying to pull with the administration at our current administration? Not the one now, but the time of the book coming out?
Well, I think it goes both ways.
I could see he was like plucking from the Trump administration, not putting the character that is Trump with, instead replacing that character with a military person, but giving him like essentially the same, like an outsider, wasn't planning on, no one really thought he was going to win, and sweeps in, is someone who's coming in, going to pull us away from NATO, wants closer ties to Russia.
Mm-hmm.
I could see some parallels that he was trying to place, just drawing from the current situation. But at the same time, it's sort of blending. They never actually state which party is which. You could
Correct.
sort of like, you could kind of deduce, I guess, most people who read these books tend to be conservative. So, you could sort of deduce whatever you wanted, but I think he does a nice job of blending, and you can sort of pick and choose who you thought was one side or the other. I don't know if you agree with me or no.
No, I agree with you. I just think it goes both ways. It was definitely cherry picking, but cherry picking, I think, in an artful way that doesn't pin him as, oh, he's the Republican bozo or he's the Democratic liberal softy. Chris did say in our interview he will never use Republican or Democrat in his books because it's not an analogy to, vilify one side and hold up the other. So I think you're right in saying he cherry picked. Like the NATO thing, how Monroe wanted to move away from NATO as a hedge against Chinese dominance. It was kind of like a way to...
It was kind of this interesting play. Yeah.
Yeah. You kind of align with Russia as a hedge against China. So it's like, okay, Trump did some of that stuff. But then again, he has a gay chief of staff or a gay, whatever Asher's role was, who believes in him. So it's like, he is someone who's not one-sided or one-dimensional in his politics. He's speaking to a wider swath of America in his administration. So, yeah, I don't think we can pin him one party or the other. Though, Hayley does drop at one point.
Make America Great Again? Did you hear that?
I didn't hear that directly.
I
think Make America Strong Again was the quote.
It might not have been Make America Great, but it was definitely Make America Something Again. Yeah.
Yeah. He could be the president to do that. And then I was thinking the quote where she says, the people back in West Virginia are Monroe people. She's from a Monroe area, which makes me think he's a Democrat. He's a Republican.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really matter, but because in the end, he's a fucking Russian mole, which I think was like the craziest thing to do, right? If he is conservative, you take him and then make him the freaking Russian mole. Like, that is fucking bold, man.
Yeah,
that is bold.
It is insane.
And reading this book, especially with Russia attacking Estonia, and now we're in our current political climate, it was very interesting to this is now 2 people back to back who have sort of, I mean, obviously I guess it's a clear, especially after Crimea, like it's an easy plot point to choose, so it's not like they're predicting the future. But it was just interesting to read that, especially with the current political climate in Ukraine.
That's where things fall apart and the president starts losing support, is he's doing nothing about Estonia. Really doing nothing to stand up to the Russians. And eventually that's when the CIA and others realize he's got to be taken out. That's a danger to our national security by letting this thing get so off the chain over in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, so I guess your original question was, do I buy the plot, like the overarching plot in the Monroe administration? Yeah, I think it's, you can see it. It has parallels to either current situations, both in 2020 or now. this idea of a Russian mole being in the White House is kind of crazy. I don't know. And this idea of a deep state and then an even deeper state.
Yeah.
I don't know, Mike. I guess we got to ask the question: do you think a deep state exists?
Let's get into that, but let's also put it on the scorecard, because 2 of our categories are plot and buy-in. And another big category on the scorecard is action, which we didn't talk about too much. So what do you say if we kind of wrap up our final thoughts, winners, losers, by also giving our scorecard rankings here? And since we're in buy-in,
do you want to just say how we're changing the scorecard a little bit?
Yeah, so as we do this, we originally used a 30-point scorecard on the Scott
Mike's
Harvath
always changing
podcast.
Things.
We're always changing things up. We're always learning. We felt that hemmed us in, or it was a little too narrow, so we've expanded the scorecard to 50 points. We've added a few categories. We had villains before. Well, we also wanted to have the good guys. So we both have good guys and bad guys now. Villains and other characters as 2 separate categories. And one thing we were definitely missing that's huge in the Scott Harvath books and most thrillers is the setting. A score on the locations, the descriptions, and the places that we go to. I think that's a hallmark of thrillers. You can't leave that out.
No, it's because it's cool to, like, especially most of these places, you don't stay in DC. You go other places, right. And just how the author, like, one describes those, how much you buy into the fact that he represented those places well.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
The last change on the scorecard is, since they're 2 of the most important elements in a thriller, we doubled up action to 10 points and plot to 10 points. So we're going to have a total of 50, action 10, plot 10, buy-in 5, bad guys 5, good guys 5, setting, and our free space, all 5 points each, for a total of 50.
Yeah, just to wrap this up, I felt like the 50, the original 25 points, we didn't want to get into half points and 0.25 points, because we wanted to have a little bit more breadth, especially with the action and plot, because, you know,
exactly,
a 7 is, like, I guess, equivalent to, like, you know, you could do a 7, 6, 5, but you really can only do a 3 or a 4 when you're doing the 5-point scale. So anyways, right. So you said, how are we going to score action, or how are we going to, let's skip action for now. Let's go right to plot and buy-in. So for plot, I gave it an 8. And I think the twist at the end really props that number up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think here the writing, you know, as we said, I really enjoyed it. It kind of took me a minute to get used to it, but it was so propulsive. I really enjoyed it in the end. And, you know, the pulling a Hauty, that was cool. And yeah, for buy-in, I don't know, like, and the question of whether or not I believe there's a deeper state, I guess I'm going to give it a 2. I'm a little bit of a skeptic in terms of, like, maybe there's a deeper state,
okay,
or a deep state, but I don't think there is. I don't know.
Okay. For plot, I went a little higher with a 9, and part of that's going to be, I like the in-between stuff, the meat in the middle of Hayley with the boot and the footprint, fighting off Scott Billings in the car, swimming away from the car accident, you know, covering up the evidence. And then even the lead up to the Camp David scene, how she maneuvers to get back into the White House after essentially being fired or demoted to the Library of Congress.
Right.
I think the plot sustained throughout, even when we didn't have these big reveals, or even when it wasn't the most sexy of scenes going on, it still sustained. So I'm giving it a 9 for the plot. And I was going to go a little higher on buy-in. I'm going to give it a 3. I'm surprised you went down to a 2. I flirted with a 4. Even as just insane as it sounds of...
As a Russian mole as the president?
Okay,
like, that sounds insane, bro.
Okay, that's why I didn't give it the 4. Because a Russian mole in the White House, a sleeper agent who gets that high up the ranks so quickly. Sure, ridiculous. But man, in terms of this universe, I bought it in the universe. I bought it for their motivations and their storytelling going on in this universe. But you're right. It's a little too off the chain of the deep state. My first reaction to the idea of Publius and the deeper state was actually my first time kind of like, come on, a deep state, you got to make a deeper state. So I questioned it a little bit, but in the end, I was bought into it. And on a second read, I was even more bought into it. So,
well, that's good. That's a good sign.
Yeah, it got my attention. It kept me engaged. I'm going with a 9 for plot, a 3 for buy-in.
All right, you sold me on. I guess I got to think about it in terms of buy-in within the context of the story, and I'll bump it up to a 3 for you, Mike.
2 was low, man. 2 was low.
Yeah, 2 was low.
And what about your buy-in in terms of your engagement? You texted me after midnight last night as you were finishing the book.
So
you can't put it down,
right? On Friday, that's when I got to like, I don't know, 40% of the book, and then I didn't have time over the weekend. So yesterday, I'm just crushing it at work, like while I'm doing my essays, and I put the kids to bed. I'm cleaning up. I watched the basketball game, and then Caroline went to bed, and I sat down on the couch and I was just listening on the podcast, and I couldn't not finish the book. I had to finish it. Yeah. So all right, I'll give it a 3.
If buy-in was just the unput downable factor, that's like a perfect 5. That's a 10 out of 10. It's 5 out of 5. You can't put it down. But we've got to incorporate buy-in of, were there roll my eye moments, or were they I kind of checked out moments? So I think you also got to incorporate that in a buy. And is it just so preposterous in the end that it doesn't matter which universe you're in, if it's fiction or not? You do want the thrillers to be grounded somewhat, you know? Like, you want it to be grounded in reality.
This is not a Marvel movie, you know. Like,
it's not science fiction.
Yeah.
All right, what about action?
Yeah, so I don't know. You're probably going to be shocked at my score here. I gave it a 6. I thought that the action out of 10. I thought the action, where we got it, was good. You know, like the opening scene, boxing, like that, a little snippet of action. We get some action with, obviously, her fight with Scott in the car, right? We get action with various times with these the Sinatra or the Rat Pack crew, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get the final takedown at Camp David. You know, like, so in the places we got it, again, I think this is a testament to his writing and the descriptions around the action. You know, it's like, you know, left punch, right punch. You know, like it just as you're reading it, it goes so fast, and it's fluid. It's not. There's times in both Mitch or Brad and in Vince where some of those chapters where it's action and their pacing goes so fast, I get confused about. I think of, and this is actually not Vince, but it's Kyle. That scene with Grisha and Rap at the very end of, what book is that? Order to Kill.
Order to Kill, yes.
Where they're in that, like,
Saudi Arabia
in that oil refinery.
Yes.
And it as you're reading that chapter, it's going so fast,
you get lost.
And I'm like, where are these people? Like, I didn't, in any of the action scenes here, I did not feel that. It was very grounded. I could understand everything, but there wasn't much action. Like, that's my problem. That's why I gave it a 6.
I think you're right. I think I'll say, looking back, there's not much action. And then a couple of action scenes are a little random, like the White House fence jumper.
Right, exactly.
Like, that was almost a plot device. You needed Hayley to prove herself. You needed her to ingratiate herself with the president. Dude, now you trust no one. Now you got me thinking, was the fence jumpers part of the deeper state to get Hayley recognized?
I think it was. I think it was.
Shit. Oh my God.
She knew they were going to be there. Like, that's once I heard that, I go back and I was looking at all these points and I'm like, wait,
snap.
Those were plans so that she could tackle him, get on the good graces. She knew that he would be like, oh, who's this person? Oh, she was in the military. I want her to be serving me my grilled cheese, you know, or I want her to be bringing me my binder. Like, all of a sudden these things start clicking after I read that twist.
Because you know how we've been talking about that weird feeling that something's not complete? When the fence jumper scene happened, I was like, kind of random, out of the blue.
It was so out of the blue.
Which means it's part of the deeper state.
It could be. You never know.
Oh my goodness. Publius organized it. Anyway. Yeah.
That's the cool part about this book, is that you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know who's part of the deep state, who's part of the deeper state, what is real, what is fake. Trust no one.
Trust no one. All right, so I went with 8 on action because I like that. I liked Hayley tracking down who she thought was clean, who she didn't think was clean. The Camp David scene was pretty cool at the end. The Secret Service deserting.
That was really cool.
I when she sees almost no one, and there's like this very eerie Camp David, and these agents were placed on duty by the conspirators, by the deep state, to disappear and leave their post. I was like, shit, that's like really creepy. And I gotta be honest, there were a few presidents recently that I wondered if all the integrity and training and dedication of service members and people like Secret Service officers, at some point, is somebody gonna just have enough? Like, just reach wit's end of just how polarized America is, and what would happen if an organization as powerful and important as a Secret Service, what if somebody or a few people snapped?
Right. That's
and
scary,
here you literally have people desert post to let the president get assassinated. Like, I found that gripping.
Yeah, I don't think I can come to terms with thinking that would happen, but I guess you never know. I hope it doesn't happen.
And it's a story, and to use that as a storytelling device was pretty powerful.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so 8 on action. I'll agree with you. Not completely jam-packed, not really consistent throughout the book, but it had my attention regardless. Villains.
All right, so what about some characters? Yeah, let's get into the villains and the good guys and the bad guys.
I have a big gripe here. I'm gonna be honest with you, but can I go first?
Sure, go first.
Okay.
I went first on the other ones.
I loved Odom. I thought he was great. Played the role perfectly.
Yeah, he was good.
But the Sinatra character, I was not on board. Especially the Catholic stuff. It was so out of place. And I don't know if my background is coloring my thoughts here, but the way he randomly would pray, and I get the intention was to say this mission means something personal to him. He thinks he's doing it for a good reason or a higher cause. But it was just so misguided and out of the blue. I couldn't put my finger on the Sinatra character and why he's praying the Hail Mary or the Our Father and getting other people in his crew. He wants them to pray with him before their ops. It struck me as just out of place.
Yeah, this is not Boondock Saints.
Right.
I don't know, maybe because we're both Catholic, it hit us weird. I don't know. I found it a little bit strange. It just wasn't needed. I don't know. It didn't add any depth to the character. This guy was just strange. He could have just been a competent assassin. You could have just had him do that. Or not a competent assassin, but like...
I have no problems if you are making a point about religious extremism, because sure, that can apply to Catholics in certain scenarios. It can apply to any religious group. You can have an extremist as a villain willing to use violence for whatever purpose that they think they twistedly justify in their mind. So I'm not against that. It was just, it didn't need to be here in this story with this plot for this character. It didn't fit in that sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. All right, so what did you give the villain?
I was going to go as low as a 2 because of that, but I liked Odom. I'm going with a 3. I thought Odom as the CIA guy was fantastic.
Yeah, I kind of went the same thing. The actual sort of players or killers, operatives, they were low for me, but Odom was high. And then, even though we didn't get much of him as a quote-unquote villain, just the fact that he is a Russian mole, like that sort of bumped up with the president being
Monroe
being a villain in the end, like that bumped it back up to a 3 for me. So yeah, I was gonna go 2, but then I gave it a 3.
Nice. And how about
what about the other characters, Mike? Yeah. So I kind of liked them, and I think So I give a 4 because I feel like, and again, as a screenwriter, you have to set some of these people up and his descriptions and giving these people a little bit of backstories. And then we also get for some people like their future stories. Like, that was cool. So I think his writing again helped the characters here. So I give it a 4. The other players were pretty good, especially Asher, Scott, even though he was a bad guy, like, some of the other, the people that you don't like, but they're not quote unquote villains.
Right.
They were good.
It was a good overall cast of characters. Like if this were an ensemble.
Leon, we got Leon Washington.
Dude, that's why I went up to a 4. I love the characters. I was like, Hayley, I love 5 out of 5. Some of the other ones, somewhere in the middle.
Oh, yeah, Hayley. I didn't even mention her.
Right, honestly. But Leon Washington, he definitely gave me that 4. I wasn't going any lower. Dude was awesome. This cook, this chef, doing what he does. Even says at one point, I don't really care about the politician in power. I care about what that person wants to eat, and I'm going to make it good for him. I love that character and how he helps out at the end in the Camp David scene. And another thing there, and this also goes back to Hayley's mentor in the very beginning, her boxing coach in the Army. Each one of these people with their either backstory or flash forward story represented something more than just themselves. They represented a slice of society or a persona or a type that we all know or we can identify with. And that was very Flynnian. I think Vince Flynn used the backstory to flesh out a character, not just to tell you who the character was, but to tell you what they represented about our world, about society. And I think Chris is doing that here with a bunch of characters, from Leon Washington to Becca the intern to Asher to the chief of staff. And I'm going 4 out of 5 on characters. I love this cast.
Yeah, and we should say, like, Hayley Chill is a freaking awesome character. Like,
right.
I'd say I was down on her for, as we're going along, but then like once I got the full reveal and like everything started to make sense, I was like, oh, she's a fucking badass. Like, she is a badass. I immediately started Savage Road.
I was going to say,
how much
Yep.
That's how much I liked her as a character that I wanted to know what she did next.
Wait till book 2 and wait till Insurrection Day. It solidifies Hayley as one of the main big names of the Thrillerverse. Absolutely. Something we didn't talk about yet. Something I'm pretty high on here. The setting. I love the DC stuff. I'm a sucker for the DC stuff.
I'm a sucker for the DC stuff too. But I'm giving it a 3 because we didn't really leave DC.
Yep.
And we've gotten better. So I'm a sucker for DC, but we've read so many books that have stayed only in DC and the general surrounding area, Virginia, Maryland, whatever, that have done a better job of going to more places. So I couldn't quite give it a 4 or 5. So I went sort of just down the middle, like 3. But, you can't go wrong with DC.
Yeah, I was gonna knock it for not going outside the city. Where was the international kind of jet setting, country to country jumps? I like that,
especially after coming off Brad. Like, Brad's gonna score a 5 on this every time, right?
Right, coming off Brad, right? The travel guide, like literally the travel producer of his own travel show on PBS. Like, yeah, traveling with Scott is a whole nother world. So I still gave it the 4. I could have gone lower for that, but I actually disagree. I do think it was heavy on DC. I would say among the best in thrillers that I've seen using the landscape. I mean, maybe it's because I drive over the Key Bridge every day, and I have considered this railing is pretty low. Could a car go over this? Or Camp David, I did a hike through the woods up there. Didn't see the actual facilities, but know the general area, and Mount Catoctin. And where else did they go around DC? There's a couple. Oh, one of the houses is in Kalorama Heights. And then Falls Church.
She was in Georgetown.
Billings has a house in Falls Church. And then they're in Georgetown. And those were not just dropped. Oh, the bus. She even takes buses, and the routes were accurate. like that one bus that
Right.
goes to
Those were
Roslyn
accurate. Those were accurate.
over the Key Bridge. Oh, as she falls into the Potomac. She gets washed downstream. The fishermen find her backpack in the Alexandria or Arlington Bank. So
You're making me want to move this up to like a 3.5. But
I'm giving. Ooh, are you going to pull out the half card?
Yeah, I think I got it. I can't give it a 3. I got to give it a 3.5.
I'm going to approve. I approve. I will not veto that choice. I'm going to stick with a 4 then. My work is done.
Okay, so one of the things we're very passionate about on this podcast, and we're continuing it here, and I was kind of surprised when I actually had the pleasure of pulling all the covers this time around. Normally that's something you do, because you didn't think there was multiple covers.
I've only seen one. Yeah.
But there actually are, and I'm gonna have to say they're all pretty good.
They're pretty good.
But the strongest contender, and the reason I'm giving this a solid, it's not a 5. 5 is hard to get with covers for us, but it's a solid 4. And the reason it's a 4 is because that original cover is so damn good.
That's so great.
And not only do they have it in black, but they have it in white.
Oh,
and both of them with this bright red. Especially with the black and the white, it pops. The house, the White House or the Capitol building is upside down. On the black cover, it says a thriller upside down. But what I like about the white cover, it says trust no one.
Yeah, that's good.
I love that. That was so good.
That's good. This cover, doing the black and white, playing off one another, and I don't know if there was a purpose, right? Like the black was the original hardcover, the white is the paperback for mass market. I'm not sure how that went down, but really smart move to do the 2-color combo, a black version, a white version. It's just this idea of what you thought you knew and then a whole nother world behind it. So really smart to do the same cover in 2 different color schemes. The upside down Capitol is pretty good. But the fact that a thriller is also upside down is just the knockout punch. It's so clever. Yes. And Deep State staring you in the face, the black, the red, perfect. This looked really good on the Kindle, by the way.
Yes.
In the high res, if you have like a Fire tablet that has like the actual color screen or an iPad, it looked so crisp on that. Because I remember that's how I read it first before I got the hard copy. Yeah, that's a great cover. You know what? Do I pull out my half card?
Ooh, half card.
No. Okay, here's why I'm not going to do it. Here's why I'm staying at a 4.
We get a running man. We have a running man.
The running man's okay.
Or running woman.
And that one's okay, but hunched over person, I'm going to call that cover C, even though we got it in the 4th spot. A cover C with the red and the yellow and hunched over person with their head hung low. That makes no sense to me.
It's a burnt piece of paper.
Sure. What's the person doing there?
It's Hayley Chill. She's got a gun.
With her head down, sulking?
I don't know, Mike. Yeah, that is kind of weird. But it has trust no one, which is pretty cool.
It says trust no one, burn after reading. I get it. Cool. I can't go higher than a 4, though. That one's kind of...
No, yeah. That's why, you can't... But the OG cover is just so good. It has to be a 4.
The OG is so good. That's a 5 out of 5 on its own. Once you
I would
introduce
agree.
me to these other, cast of characters, overall, I can't give it that perfect 5. It's going to take a lot to get the perfect 5 on covers from us, but the original Deep State comes pretty darn close.
Okay, Mike. The all-important Free Space, a.k.a. our winner of the book. I think we're sort of transitioning Free Space to be our winners of the book. Automatic 5. So I had a feeling that we were probably both going to pick the same one. So I have a backup, but my first 5 out of 5 is the twist. Like the whole plot subversion and bringing that card out, with 40 minutes left in the audiobook or however many chapters left in the book was just amazing. It brought this book from being, I'm like, all right, it's a decent thriller to, wow, this is a really good book. Did you have the same one?
I agree with you. I said the twist as well. So I came up with a secondary one, just a backup because I knew we'd both say that.
All right. Well, you say yours, and then I'll tell you my backup too.
And mine, I'm surprised we haven't talked about it. And when we cover Savage Road, we'll talk about it more. It only comes in the last 10, 20 pages, but Publius is a big winner. When that former president and Supreme Court justice, because Hayley asked for, I need confirmation. If you're recruiting me for this, you're putting me through this, how do I know you're not the liar? When she asked that question, if I'm supposed to trust no one and there's a deep state, how can I trust you telling me there's a deep state? I was like, boom, love this girl.
Boom, baby.
And they're like, okay, you're right. That's the only question that needed to be asked. Let me bring you some evidence next week. And they fly in a former president, Supreme Court justice. By the way, were you getting huge RBG vibes? Did you hear the plank comment?
I did. Yeah, I had a feeling.
Former Supreme Court justice, you should try planking, she says at one point. And they have a laugh about it. I was like, oh, snap. But for the former president, it was a mashup again. We're not taking sides here, Democrat, Republican. I felt like the way he held himself and was described, it was a Bill Clinton, George W. mashup. Like he had this presence and strength of a W, but this imposing or lightheartedness of a Bill Clinton. I don't know. But I liked Publius. And let me just give you this quote here of how Publius is described. Unless, do you want to first share your secondary one?
No, give us a quote.
Yeah, listen to this. This is why I love this idea so much. So you're shocked by the Russia stuff. And once the shock of Monroe as the Russian mole, once that wears off, you're hit again with who is this Publius? Who's going to stand up to the Russian mole? And he writes, quote, a loose affiliation of individuals who shared lifelong government service and extreme patriotism. Most were retired from those official offices, which included former presidents, Supreme Court justices, NSA and CIA directors, senators, and military brass. None maintain those powerful positions at the present time, thereby guaranteeing their motivations were pure and absent the typical self-serving incentives of their active counterparts. There was no name for this group, nor was there a leader or hierarchy. Few of them had ever met one another, their identities hidden behind avatars and pseudonyms. Dude, the deeper state of CIA directors, NSA directors, justices, former presidents, that's nasty.
I also liked how they both the Publius and the Operation Damocles people, they kind of had the same goal. Like they weren't going to let this president, ultimately do what he wanted to do, but bring us closer to Russia. But I like how Chris explains the rationale and how we should align with Publius, because the reason why Damocles and Odom and those players, even though they said they wanted it for national security or the State of the Union, they really wanted it to remain in power, and for them they crave power. But for these other people, they're out of power. They don't really care about having that anymore. I mean, I guess you could argue that they sort of do have power, but
they have influence.
They have influence, but their ultimate goal is to preserve the Constitution, preserve our country, and I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So my backup was the introduction. The introduction scene to Hayley Chill and the boxing scene.
Yes.
I just thought that was a cool, original way to introduce us to our character. We get a little like hints of who she is, a little bit of her backstory, and then this one of the action scenes that were very good. And she's down, she's out, and she comes back. I don't know. I really clicked with it. I thought it was a cool, original way to kickstart this story.
I'm with you. And you know what even pumps that up even more? Little tidbits about who she is, like squeezing the rock before a fight.
Right. Exactly.
Blood has been drawn. Now the fight can begin. I love that.
All right. So what total does that give you, Mike?
I end up with a 40 out of 50. which I think is fair because I love this book. And as we've said on the Scott Harvath pod, we are not analyzing the book to give you a perfect 50 out of 50, a perfect 100 out of 100. Our job is not to tell you it's a perfect book. Our job is to analyze, to critique in both a positive and a constructive way at the same time. Talk about what we love, talk about what we didn't like, because the book deserves that. So 40 out of 50, I think, is a fantastic score. Even our Scott Harvath books have ended up in the low 30 or low 20s out of 30s. So yeah, 40 out of 50, I think that's right for me. What'd you get?
Well, Lions was 25 eventually. And I think we need to go back and recalculate it based on these new parameters, because I think it would score close to the 40, if not a little bit higher.
True.
But I gave it a 36.5. Maybe I'm a little low. I don't know. I feel like I'm coming in a little bit negative, more negative than you. But yeah, no, like you said, we wouldn't choose a book to even do the scorecard unless we already thought you should go out and buy it and read it. So
we recommend it.
Just take that with a grain of salt. So yeah,
I will say my first read through, I would have been about there, and this
maybe I need to
higher.
go back and read it.
Yep.
I need to go back and read it then.
Went higher on my reread, and I think, dude, goes higher with Savage Road, because I'm not going to say much, but you know who becomes a character? Andrew Wilde, Hayley's recruiter for the Deeper State. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh yeah, we met him for like a second, right, at the Red Lobster. Nice.
Yeah, pretty cool conversation too, and thank goodness. But you're going to get more of him.
Yeah, so we're coming in like I'm Goodreads. Goodreads gave it a 3.89. Your Amazon gave it a 4.4. You know, this thing was an international bestseller, editor's choice from the New York Times book review, a Los Angeles Times bestseller, and Indie Next pick for January. So people love this book.
A little low on Goodreads. I'm surprised by that. I don't think that's deserved.
Maybe they didn't reread it and analyze it like we did.
You know what? I bet some people maybe didn't finish it.
Oh, I hope not.
I think some people probably put it down. Because I'll be honest with you, I don't know.
If you don't get to that twist, it probably is a 3.8. You know?
Right, it changes everything. I wonder if that's the case. I'd have to read some of the comments.
Some of the comments, yeah.
Interesting. Hey, one more idea for you as we wrap up. We always want to thank our patrons, you guys who help make this podcast possible by financially supporting us. Couple bucks a month, price of one paperback. You can get cool swag like a No Limits Scott Harvath bookmark, a Mitrap Pod sticker, and a lot of our bonus content. What do you think, Chris? What if we do some fan casting on our little Patreon bonus podcast feed, where we could talk about who we think would play Hayley Chill or Monroe and all these different characters? We could do a special recording for our patrons.
Oh, yeah. I have those in mind, ready to go. So let's do that.
Yeah, I'm really curious who you see as Hayley.
Did you think it was one random thing that popped in my head we didn't talk about? Did you think it was random how he said, like, he put Barack Obama as a character in this book?
Wait, when?
He said that, I think Odom has, like, a picture with Barack Obama.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. Like, this whole world is, I was just imagining it's, like most thrillers, they take place in an alternate history. But yeah, no, Barack Obama was a character in this book.
That's funny because he didn't name RBG at the end. He didn't name, Clinton, Bush, Obama, whichever president that was, but he name dropped that one.
Yeah, it wasn't like a character. It was just like he had this, the CIA director had a picture taken with, or like had some artifact. I forget specifically what it was, but it gave continuity that Barack Obama was a president in this universe.
Yeah. And I guess something that brings us really into the universe is Insurrection Day, the novella, right, which takes place on January 6th. So there are some parallels Chris wants to draw with our universe and hers. There's some overlap.
Yeah, Savage Road was published on January 5th of 2021, the day before January 6th.
Yeah, I don't think I caught that. Interesting. Very interesting. All right, my man. It's fun. This was a good book.
Yeah, no, this was fun. I like doing these single book pods. Hopefully we keep doing more of these.
Yeah, the rest of this month, we want to squeeze in a bit more Chris Hauty content. Hopefully, we'll cover a few more of the books. Storm Rising just released today, the day of our recording. We definitely want to cover that one soon. But also looking ahead, June is going to be Jack Carr month on the Thriller podcast. So come back here. We'll be covering Terminal List and also In the Blood, the new release. So we're getting ready in June for the TV show that's going to come out shortly thereafter. And we're definitely going to be covering the Terminal List TV show once that drops.
All right, we need to thank our patrons, including our special operator, Sherry F., our special agents, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Dawn, Dennis, Peggy, Catherine, Ray, Bridget, Jeff, and Mark. Please subscribe, rate, and review using your favorite podcasting platform. You can find us at thethrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at MidtrapPod. And as always, keep the faith.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Trust No One. I really I would have put my money on Trust No One.
I have to. Hold on. Can you cut that?
Maybe a little post-credit.
No, let me redo that. All right, let me redo it all. I'm just going to go back.
No, just do. Everything else is perfect, so just do as always.
And as always, trust no one.
Dude, I had my money on you saying it. I really did.
I don't know why I didn't. Damn it.
I would have gambled my very small amount of life savings on you saying it.